Good evening. We're coming to you from Prime Media, and this is our very last taping of 10 Forward. I'm Sue Christensen.
And I'm Andy Pilon, Sue's co-host for this evening. Unfortunately, Captain John is not with us tonight. He's actually in Montreal taking part in the referendum activities. And Sue, what can you tell us about Prime Media and what we have in store for our viewers tonight?
Well, it's a special show. As I said, it's our very last one. As 10 Forward, we'll be coming back as something else, but we'll discuss that later. We're here at the Ramada 401 on Wilson. We'll be here all weekend. They're having great guests like Chris Carter, the creator and producer of The X-Files. And the whole evening is going to be fantastic. Our first guest this evening will be Cindy Huckle, one of the chair committee people of Prime Media, who will tell us what's happening at this convention, and it's a lively and hopping one. Andy, you'll be talking to people in the dealer's room later on.
That's right. Throughout the evening, I'll be talking to people in the dealer's room like John McFetrich, and he's here with a film company. They're actually doing a film here. They've been here all week, and they're going to film during the convention, and it's a funny comedy about a wedding. A couple getting married at a sci-fi convention, so it should be kind of fun.
We'll have a bit to do with that tomorrow, too. We're going to do some shooting with them as well. And also, you will be talking to, hopefully, the people from Core Computer Graphics.
That's right, Core Digital Pictures, Animation House in Toronto. I had the privilege of doing a story on Core and telling the viewers about their effects earlier in the season on 10 Forward, and they're supposed to be here tonight, I'm hoping, and then I'll get to talk to them and update everybody on what they've been doing the past couple of months.
And we have a massive audience out here live, well, very lively, rather lively. And if we have questions from the audience, we'll be delighted to take them and entertain them as much as we can in the areas of science fiction, fantasy, and speculative fiction.
Sounds great, Sue.
Okay, let's stop for this brief message and then on with our evening. And we're back at Prime Media at the Ramada 401 on Wilson. Hope to see you here this weekend. We'll be here all weekend, October 27th, 28th, 29th. And with me is Cindy Huckle, one of the founders of Prime Media and this year's guest liaison. Cindy, how did Prime Media start out barely a year ago?
Well, basically, it was an idea and a group of friends who got together. And then we sort of decided on a particular date, and we sort of moved towards that. And it actually happened. We were quite surprised that it actually did, because we were working under a small time frame. But once the first one happened and it was fairly successful, we decided on the second one this year.
What is the difference between your convention and those others that feature special shows, such as the Star Trek conventions and the X-File conventions? Where does yours differ?
Ours is strictly a media convention in the true sense of the word media. Basically, we're dealing with any aspect of the medium. So it could be literary arts, it could be television, it could be film, it could be all aspects in between. Dance, theater, you name it, we're going to do it.
So your guests will come from the whole spectrum of entertainment. They will be all those things: actors, writers, cartoonists, dancers, folk singers.
Yes, as we go along, we hope to add to what we're doing right now. Our primary focus at this point in time is more the literary arts, television and film, with some comics and some other things mentioned in there, like improv sessions with some comedy thrown in. We have people from Big City Improv, the stand-ins, coming this weekend. And so that's something new that we didn't do last year in terms of that end of the scale. It's basically testing the waters to see what goes, and as it grows, the convention itself, then we'll add on different aspects of medium.
Of course, you have a huge name here at the convention this weekend. Tomorrow your guest will be Chris Carter, the creator, producer, and writer of The X-Files. What kind of response have you had to his presence?
It's been very good. It's been very interesting to see what's been going around about him. We have felt very secure about having him for such a short time period, and it's interesting to see how fast the word has gotten out that he's actually coming.
There was a convention not long ago in Toronto featuring The X-Files. It had a couple of actors there, and we had the good fortune to cover that. And I think it's no exaggeration to say it was a zoo. The room, the convention floor was packed with people. The energy was at fever pitch. People were squealing, yelling, loving every minute. The kind of excitement that hasn't been at a convention for quite a while. Are you anticipating that kind of madness here tomorrow? And if so, what are you going to do about it?
Well, at this particular point in time, we anticipate that we're going to have large numbers coming to the convention to see Chris tomorrow. Basically, we have a cap of 500, and we have to hold that cap because of the size of the hotel. Our hotel is a lot smaller than the one previously used for the X-File conventions. So we have to maintain that, and basically we've been telling people that. We've been lucky enough in that anyone who has been talking about the convention has also emphasized that point. So if people are interested in finding out more information about the convention, they can do that, but they have to understand that once we reach 500, that's it.
Any extra special measures like security, that sort of thing?
Well, we do have some additional security because our numbers are anticipated to be bigger than what we thought they were going to be. But other than that, no.
Now, when we were at the last X-Files convention, Global TV had a lot of input with that because, of course, they are the station in Toronto carrying X-Files. Will Global be doing anything with you and Prime Media?
Yes, they have been, to my understanding. They've been doing it quietly, so it's not creating such a commotion as it did the last time. We talked to them after what had happened because they were quite surprised it had gotten out of control so fast. And we want more control over the numbers that come to the convention, and so they've been very cooperative in that area.
Will they be here at all tomorrow?
They will be here tomorrow doing some filming around the convention, and they will also be interviewing Chris too.
Can you give us a quick rundown on who else will be here?
Well, besides our main guests of honor, Spider and Jeannie Robinson, who are renowned as science fiction and fantasy authors, we have a number of authors from Northern Frights 3, which we're launching tonight. We also have a variety of comic book artists. We have the improv sessions with the stand-ins. A lot is happening.
Cindy, it sounds like a great weekend and a fantastic convention. We wish you the best of luck. We'll be seeing you all weekend long, and thank you for taking time with us. Now we're going to go off and speak to our man on the street, Andy Pallon, in the dealer's room with his guests.
Thank you very much, Sue. And I'm standing here with cast and crew right now, and they're making a special movie here. They've been here all week, and it's a comedy about a wedding happening here at a sci-fi convention like Prime Media, and they're going to tell us all about it. First of all, we've got Alan, who's the producer. And Alan, what can you tell us about your production?
Well, we wanted to do something that was a lot of fun. We wanted to tie it in very, very tightly with the whole science fiction realm that we've been fans of all our lives. John came to me with a really hilarious script. I figured that we could do it. Went out, tried to see if I could get the money, and I did. And John's taken over from here, and he's coming up with an amazing movie, and he'll tell you a little about it.
Okay, so John, what can you tell us about the basic story element?
Well, it's a comedy about a couple who think it would be a great idea to get married at a con. And for about the first 10 seconds it is, till everything starts to fall apart on them.
And what sort of things fall apart on them? What can you tell us about it without giving it all away?
I can tell you that the bachelor party doesn't work out quite as well as they thought it might. I can tell you that the bride maybe gets cold feet. I can tell you that it's a door slamming, body falling down comedy.
Okay, and why did you choose the con site? Why at a convention? What were you thinking when you chose that idea?
Well,
Why the
I
con?
first went to a convention in 1977. It was the New Con in Boston. And I thought it was just great. I thought it was just a whole lot of fun. And then as I got into filmmaking, I thought I had to make a low-budget film. It was all the money we could raise, though we raised it. And we wanted to make our low-budget film as big as we possibly could. I didn't want to do like a slasher movie. I didn't want to do that kind of stuff. I wanted to do a fun movie with a lot of people in it. So we do it at a convention. Wanted it to be a kind of a celebration. So we thought a wedding.
Okay.
So here we are.
You're the main actress in it. What can you tell me
This
about
is the star.
About your role?
Well, I'm Maid Shonda, the bride-to-be, and it's my second marriage. So having met my fiancé at a convention and sort of very quickly deciding to get married, I'm a little bit gun-shy, kind of nervous, but I'm going to go through with it anyway. And we have a great time and a fabulous wedding, and I wear a lovely white dress. And, you know,
What's
it's...
your most favorite part in the movie?
I think it has to be the airborne belly flop that our illustrious director takes into the pool after spying on us continuously through very intimate romantic moments.
Would you say he
I
deserves
should-
what he got then?
Absolutely.
I should
yeah,
explain
and
that,
more.
that
Okay, I'll let you in a minute. We want to talk to the... So Randy, what can you tell us about your part?
Well, I'm befuddled. That's how I've been described. I'm kind of just a big happy guy who's very lucky. He's marrying the woman of his dreams, and I come to this convention all excited and ready to party and have a good time. And as I said, the bachelor party doesn't exactly turn out the way we had hoped, because there's problems with my best friend, and there's a big almost breakup with the wife to be, and I have to run around and find her and all this kind of stuff. Yes.
Well,
Well, no, maybe not.
Here's what I'll tell you.
It's a comedy.
What the couple has done is got their friend Jerry, who's kind of an amateur filmmaker, to film their wedding. It's half wedding video, half documentary of the con, and it works out well for them, not so well for Jerry.
Okay. Well, that's fabulous. It's been great talking to all of you, and now we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more of 10 Forward. So stay tuned.
And we're back here at Prime Media at the Ramada 400-401 on Wilson. Our next guest is Spider Robinson, renowned science fiction writer and man of many talents. What are some of the other things you do, Spider?
Well, I flatter myself that I am a folk singer. This is easy to do because there are no folk singers left in the world anymore, nor jobs for them, so I can claim that credit without fear of contradiction.
As a matter of fact, you were folk singing just a few minutes ago, were you not?
Yeah, it's my deepest love. Martin Mull says back in the 60s there was something called the Great Folk Music Scare, or for a while there seemed to be some danger that that crap would catch on, but fortunately it blew over and wiser heads prevailed and we went on into disco. And it was at that time that I realized I was going to have to find some other way to earn a living without working for it, which is how I came to science fiction writing.
We all mourn the loss of that music, but then disco did bring in those wonderful fashions, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yikes.
But it was a terrible shame. For just a while there, a young man all by himself with an acoustic guitar singing existential plaints of angst could get dates, and could get girls. And then it blew over in no time at all. At about that time, I had just graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in English. And the moment I hit the streets with my BA in English, I realized much too late that I didn't want to drive a cab. And there aren't any other things you're qualified for except to teach English. And in sheer desperation, I took a job as a night watchman, guarding a sewer. I spent my first year as a night watchman guarding a hole in the ground to prevent its theft.
God forbid anyone steal the rats.
Exactly, exactly. And this, as you can well imagine, got boring. A hole in the ground doesn't do a lot. There's not a lot of action. So to kill time, I read science fiction, as I'd been doing since I was 6 years old. And one night, just like everyone else who's ever read science fiction, I flung a book away and said, "Oh, I could write better than that idiot." And a light bulb appeared in the air over my head. I was being paid to sit still. There was a typewriter in this construction shack they had me in. There was paper that if I just turned it over so you couldn't see where it said J.D. Pasilico Construction Company on the top, it looked like actual story paper. And to kill time, I pecked out a story about where I would rather be, about the bar where if a Martian walked in and ordered a beer, they'd give him a beer and leave him alone. The kind of bar where they'd let you smash your glass in the fireplace. And I just, made it up off the top of my head, had a great time. This is where I'd rather be. And when I was done, it dawned on me, this is like a story. It's almost sort of like a piece of fiction. If I was to mail this to magazines, why, then they'd send me rejection slips, and then I could impress girls. Because I'd be a tragic figure, a failed writer, a romantic image. And so I mailed my little effort off to Analog Magazine, the highest paying market, figuring they'd have the slickest rejection slips. And they crossed me up and sent me a check for $400. It was disappointing, but
Better than folk singing.
it seemed like the $400 represented about 6 weekends of folk singing. This had been about 6 hours. It seemed like a good idea. I quit the job guarding the sewer, became a full-time writer, and everything I wrote for the next 2 years bounced everywhere in the business. I shouldn't have worried. I soon had a complete first folio edition of all the rejection slips in the industry, and it did in fact impress women and get girls.
And it must have worked very well because you have a wife of some 2 decades.
Yes, we celebrated our 20th anniversary last month, and both, I'm happy to say, signed up for another term.
I understand that she is really your partner in creativity.
Yes, I've published 22 books, but the best of them all are the 3 that I've written with Jeannie. Jeannie is, among many other things, a dancer, a retired dancer, a choreographer, and years ago, 13, 14 years back, we happened to write a story together by accident. It was not intended, but somehow I found myself with a collaborator I hadn't been expecting. A story about zero gravity dance. And the story did pretty good. It won a few awards.
A few big name awards.
Well, won a Hugo like that, won a Nebula. Jeannie, as far as I know, is the first woman ever to win a Hugo and a Nebula with her first published story. But the really interesting side effect of all that was NASA came to us and asked Jeannie if she would be willing to go up in the space shuttle. They had at that time something called the Civilian in Space program.
They approached her.
They wanted her to come and dance in zero gravity. The NASA was desperately looking for some PR, better than jocks in spacesuits waving, and they figured a beautiful woman dancing might do it. Also in the Civilian in Space program with John Denver, the folk singer. They had a school teacher, they had Jeannie. Unfortunately, the first civilian they sent up was the school teacher, and they killed her, and that was the end of the Civilian in Space program.
Thanks for spending time with us. You have been a fun guest, and we hope we see you all weekend long. We're going back to the dealer's room and to Andy Pilon, who's got something else on the go.
Thanks very much, Sue. And right now I'm joined by Patty Vickers, and she works right here actually in the dealer's room. And Patty, what could you tell me about what you do here in the dealer's room?
Well, I work assisting the dealers, setting up their tables, answering any questions they have, helping them book their tables, and helping them set up and tear down.
Okay, and you're a big fan of the X-Files, you were telling me earlier, and what is it about the X-Files that you like so much?
Oh, it's the emphasis on the paranormal. There hasn't been a show quite like the X-Files ever, and though it's sci-fi, it's not Star Trek, and it's made its own mark that way.
Okay, and of course the creator is going to be here this weekend, and that's Chris Carter, and you're, I suppose, hoping to get to meet him?
Oh, definitely. It would be very interesting to talk to the man who's created this show that has inspired such an intense loyalty so quickly.
And what do you think it is about the X-Files that has such a following?
It's tapped into something that nothing else has ever tapped into. The government conspiracy, the feeling that we're not being told everything, and people's hopes that, in fact, we are not the only life form out there.
Okay, and you also are involved with the Toronto Treks. You have been in the past and you will be this year. What could you tell us about this coming year?
Toronto Trek 10 will be held at the Regal Constellation Hotel August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And so far our confirmed guests are both from Voyager, Robert Picardo, who plays the Doctor, and David Rossi, who's a line producer. We're hoping to book an X-Files guest. That would be a really big benefit to the convention, but so far those are our 2 guests.
And how do you find the attendance at the Toronto Treks? Does it get bigger every year, or what's it like?
Oh, it changes every year, depending on the guest and the interest in everybody's financial situation every year. But, you know, each year we'll be getting stronger, and we're the largest fan-run convention in Canada.
And what got you involved with these conventions? It's just because you're a big fan of sci-fi, or what is it that you like about working on these?
That was part of it. I started attending them as a fan, and then I started looking around and thinking, gee, these people are working awfully hard, and it would be fun to meet and talk to some of these people. So I did. I started volunteering, and now I'm on the convention committee.
Okay, and Prime Media, what's happening this weekend here that you can tell us about?
Oh, there's a lot of things happening in Prime Media. They have many guests. They have technical guests from TechWar. They have actor guests. They have the sci-fi writers Spider and Janine Robinson, and of course Chris Carter. Everybody's looking forward to that.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for talking to us. And now we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more of 10 Forward, so stay tuned.
And we're back in the main ballroom at the Prime Media at the Ramada 400-401 here on Wilson. live or semi-live by the time you see it. And our next guest is Don Hutchinson, who is the editor of Northern Frights, Canada's only horror anthology. You've been going for about 3 years now, Don?
3 years. The first one came out in 1992, called Northern Frights. The second one came out a year later with a brilliant jump. We call it Northern Frights 2. And the third one is about to be launched here tonight. It's called Northern Frights 3.
Can we have a look at that one?
Yes.
And that's the newest version, and you are launching that here at the convention.
Yes, we are. This evening at 10 o'clock as part of the opening and reception party.
Super. So that is actually happening tonight. You've got a host of wonderful authors in there. Can you tell us about some of the people who have contributed to that anthology?
To this specific one, one that a lot of people here will probably recognize is Chris Wiggins, the actor who played Jack Marshak on Friday the 13th TV series.
Now, his story doesn't relate to that at all, does it?
Not at all. He's a very good writer. I didn't realize this until he sent me a couple stories. You know, you think, oh, he's an actor, not a writer. I'll have a look at the story. Excellent stuff.
Super. Can you give us a little hint about what his story was about?
Yes, it's set in Nova Scotia, and
where a lot of horrible things happen.
A lot of horrible things happen. It's really a story about storytelling itself. It has a story within a story, and it's about the power of storytelling, which is why I liked it. About the power to thrill and kill.
Now, these are basically short stories. What kind of length can the viewer or the reader, I'm thinking another medium here. What kind of length will the reader expect in these?
Anything from about 1,000 words, which is a short story, which is a classic form for many horror stories, to as much as 11,000 words, which in the old days used to be called a novella, but they're long, short stories.
And in the course of your launch tonight, what will be happening? You'll have the authors sitting down and writing out their autographs?
Yeah, we have 10 or 12.
Sipping tea and drinking blood?
Not quite. We have 10 or 12 local writers in this book. It just happened that way. The Northern Frights 1 and 2, we spread them around Canada just a little bit more, but somehow we have, in this area, this immediate area, we have a lot of very good writers.
And I hope they all get in, because everyone's been saying the traffic tonight has been abysmal.
It took me an hour to come from downtown.
Yikes.
Yeah.
As well as the launch tonight, will you be doing any more work within the convention floor over the course of the weekend with Northern Frights?
With Northern Frights? Yes, we have a panel on Sunday afternoon, I believe, at 1 p.m. and the launch tonight. And the other panel I'm doing has nothing to do with Northern Frights.
Okay. You're the editor. How did that come to be, that you became the editor of this odd and wonderful little thing?
Well, it was my own creation. I've been reading fantasy, science fiction all my life, and been associated with the field as a reader and a fan. And I judged that we needed something like that in Canada. We had a history of writing science fiction, and there were several science fiction anthologies and magazines in Canada, but nothing in the length of, or the idea of dark fantasy.
So you decided it was time for that format.
Yeah.
Great.
So approached the publisher, who thought it was a great idea. He said, there's only one problem, I'd like to make it into a series. And I said, that's fine, since that's what I had in mind to begin with.
How regularly do you like these to come out? Are they about once a year they appear?
We've had 3 come out in 3 years, so it looks like an annual. On the other hand, number 4 will come out when we have enough good stories. So
now,
whether that's a year from now or not, I'm not sure.
I also have an audio cassette. Now, is this something new, or is this something you did from the beginning?
That is new. Now, that also is being launched tonight. I have not seen that until this evening.
But you must have known about it.
Oh, I knew about it, yeah. 6 stories from Northern Frights 1 and 2, read by R.H. Thompson.
And this must be fairly exciting. It's taking the idea you had and branching it off in a whole other direction.
Oh, it is. It is. We also have an idea for a Northern Frights TV series, too, if we can get that going. It's just an idea.
Now, will that be all done in Canada if you can get it going?
Hopefully.
Great.
Yeah. The stories are set in Canada.
Certainly,
Why not?
yeah.
It's a great background, you see, for horror and dark fantasy. That big brooding land out there.
Those mountains, those rivers.
Mountains,
the
rivers.
Moose. The moose alone are frightening.
Well, we have a great tradition, though, our oral storytelling. The natives, many of the legends, the loup-garou, which was the werewolf legend, translated from Europe into Canada.
Sasquatch,
Wendigo,
right?
the Wendigo, the Sasquatch, yeah. There's a Sasquatch story in number 3, as a matter of fact, called Sasquatch.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Now, you came from a background other than editing. What else have you done in the field of entertainment?
I was a filmmaker for many years, mostly documentaries, an editor, director, cinematographer, director of photography.
What type of, you said they were mostly... what
Mostly
type of-
documentaries.
Of what type?
One of the other, just documentary films of all kinds of types of documentaries, some dramas. But the other panel I'm on, coincidentally, at this convention is one based on a feature documentary we made called In Advance of the Landing, which was about the UFO mythology, and based on a book called In Advance of the Landing. We interviewed almost all the people around North America who were identified with UFO sightings or kidnappings or whatever.
Is there a lot of sightings and people who believe they've had sightings or close encounters within Canada itself? Is that
Oh yeah,
not more of an American?
yeah. There's a writer named John Robert Colombo who actually did a book called UFOs Over Canada. And we interviewed a number of people in Canada.
Do you remember any of those circumstances where any of them were like really interesting stories?
Well, they're all interesting. Our film wasn't really about whether UFOs are flying saucers from outer space or not. It was about the people who believe in them. So we had a somewhat different slant. In many cases, we were dealing with dreamers. You know, it was really about dreaming, the tendency to want these wonderful things to be true. In a way, this is what dark fantasy is too.
Exactly, yes.
Not that we want all these things to be true, but it's a form of dreaming. Daydreams, sometimes nightmares.
Yeah, it's very much mental recreation, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
This weekend for you then, are you local to Toronto?
Yes.
So
Yep.
you didn't have to travel like some by plane and then in and...
No, but I had to travel on the 401, and
That itself has
That
been a
was-
supernatural experience, hasn't it? Everyone who's tried to come in tonight apparently has run into
that's
2 and
right,
3 hour
that's right.
delays.
I might have been able to fly in from Ottawa just a little
A little
faster. Who knows?
right?
Yeah.
Although I didn't know, there's quite a few people streaming out of Quebec this evening as well.
Yes, I know. We won't talk about that.
No.
It's another dark fantasy.
Whoa. No, we'll pass by on that one. So is there a chance that Chris Wiggins will be in tonight?
He said he would be here.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, no, he'll be caught on the 400.
He might be.
On
That's
the
right. He
401,
might be
so-
on the 401.
That's right, there's another one that's
In
left.
fact, I'm getting nervous. I haven't seen many of my writers so far, but he
What
should
time
be
are you
here.
scheduled to go? Very shortly?
10.
10 o'clock?
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
you've got some
time.
breathing space.
Yeah, there's time.
You've got some breathing space. It's happening for everybody around here. I think it's been a
Yeah,
night of
yeah.
interesting horrors.
And it's Friday evening, too.
Yeah.
A lot of people have to work. Even writers often have their day jobs.
Yeah, we're all familiar with that,
Yeah,
boy.
this
the
is
the real
Canada.
world intrudes. yeah.
This is Canada, after all. A few of these people actually earn a living from writing, but it's a tough road to hoe.
You obviously deal with a lot of authors in Canada. Are there any out there who, like you said, can actually make a living with it? Who are good enough that they are out there doing it all the time? What are the names?
Well, there's Charles Dellent, who is very
Right.
well known,
And-
who was in our first book.
Right?
Charles Dellent is a well-known fantasist living in Ottawa.
Has he
who,
done full
earned-
length, or is this he just?
Oh yes,
short
he's done a
stories?
number of
Right.
novels, and yeah, I would say right now he's earning a very good living. He's very popular around the world.
Super. And he's one of yours.
Yeah, we had him in the first
The first
one, and he's promised something for number 4.
I was going to say,
If he isn't too busy doing.
do you have authors come back if they've written for you before?
Oh yeah, the first 3 books have 2 or 3 writers, like Nancy Kilpatrick, who's
Oh,
here
yes,
tonight,
yes,
and
yeah.
another fellow, David Nicol, Ado Van Belkom, who will be here tonight. They're in all 3 books. They're local, and they're very good writers.
Here's a question I'd like to ask you. In the horror genre, there's a lot of very familiar monsters, werewolves and mummies and Frankenstein
Mm-hmm.
monsters. But vampires, now they get a lot of coverage, and there's something about vampires. They're always suave, they're always debonair, they're always sexy, they're always appealing. They're as bad as all the rest of them. Why are they so appealing?
Well, you know, they weren't always Byron-esque, these romantic characters. If you go back and read the original Dracula,
Right.
he's not that suave. In the stage plays made of Dracula, they gave him a long cloak and things like this, and he became the suave character. Not in the book. I think this is a more recent phenomenon, this idea of
Hollywood.
the romantic
Hollywood
vampire.
intrudes,
Absolutely,
right.
yeah.
Don, we've had a wonderful time talking to you. We hope to see you later on at the launch of your anthology this evening and to meet some of your authors. Thanks very much for spending
Okay.
time with us.
My pleasure.
And now we're back off to Andy.
Thank you, Sue. And joining me right now in the dealer's room is Peter Block Hansen, and he's the Canadian correspondent for Starlog magazine. And Peter, could you tell me, what does a Canadian correspondent do?
Well, a Canadian correspondent writes articles for Starlog about science fiction and fantasy film and television. That is being done in Toronto. That is to say, a TV show or a movie that's being shot in Toronto or in Canada. They call it me, or they write me, or I call them. We get together and I do an article for it. They publish it, and the best part is they pay me.
Okay, and could you tell us about some of the latest articles you've written?
Well, the current issue has an article that I did about a film that was shot in Toronto last spring called Cybertech PD. I have an upcoming interview with, what is the matter with my brains turned to mush? I have an upcoming interview with Catherine Disher from the currently filming series Forever Night. I did an interview with Nigel Bennett from the same series recently, which is, he's an amazing guy. It was a lot of fun to do that.
Okay, and of course you're here at the Prime Media Convention, and what are you doing here at Prime Media this weekend?
Well, the organizers asked me if I would help out with some programming, lead panels of interest about. We did one tonight on we did one tonight on science fiction magazines. There's a lot of magazines about science fiction film and television besides Starlog, but they're not nearly as good as Starlog, of course. And also about, I'm supposed to be an expert on science fiction television and film, so they want me to share my expertise with fans, so I'm doing that. I'm doing another panel on Sunday about how to professionally interview. You should come to that.
Okay, and how do you find meeting the fans and everything? Do you enjoy yourself out here at these conventions?
No, it's agony. It's terrible. No, actually, I do enjoy meeting the fans. You meet a lot of really fascinating people. Some people are very, very unusual, and some people are really, really interesting, energetic, and dynamic people. It's quite a range.
And what future plans do you have for Starlog coming up?
What future plans do I have for Starlog coming up? Well, basically, the editor, pretty much is in control of that. I would like to see him, giving me more and more and more and more work, and like that.
What articles are you hoping to write? What are you working on for future?
Well, I would like to do some interviews with the Highlander TV series. I would like desperately to do an interview with Deborah Duchesne on Forever Night, and those two things come to mind immediately. There's not a lot of science fiction stuff going on in Toronto right now.
What do you find so fascinating about Forever Night? You seem to have had the privilege of talking to quite a few of the stars of Forever Night. What makes that so fascinating a show?
Well, Forever Night is a fascinating show because basically it's a really interesting take on a vampire, because you've got a character who is a vampire, doesn't want to be a vampire, is trying to atone for all the evil deeds he's done in the past by working as a night police officer. And it's really, really a fun show, really interesting. And the people they've got, the actors, are just glorious fun to interview. Garrett Wynne Davies has an astonishing sense of humor. Nigel Bennett is a character like you'll never meet before.
Great. Well, I appreciate you talking with us, Peter. It was nice to talk to you. And now we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more of 10 Forward, so stay tuned.
Has just shot open wide in Ontario. And this is once again the last show ever of 10 Forward. We're here at Primedia at the Ramada 400-401 on Wilson, and we'll be here all weekend having a ton of fun. We've met all kinds of people tonight, writers and authors and musicians and singers, and now we have an actress and a fine one. We're talking with Natalie Radford, the Nika character from Tech War, and boy, you have done science fiction inside out. Give us a list of some of the stuff you've done.
Well, it started with 18 episodes of Tech War and then a bunch of movies of the week up here, actually, that filmed in Toronto. Human Touch, The Android Affair, Synapse, a bunch more.
There's a lot going on,
yeah.
Just recently, I read a report on how the show business in Toronto has just mushroomed, that there's tons of jobs. The job percentage has gone up something like 300% within the media and acting community. Do you find that really relates to real jobs for actors?
It certainly does. Mostly the American work that's coming in, they will bring up their star names, and The way it goes legally, though, is that they do have to cast Canadians as well in some of these leading roles. So it works out great for us because we get exposure with American stars as well. And then there's also, for people who are just starting out in the business, a lot of more principal roles, actor roles. So it gets people the opportunities to get involved in the industry.
So this is the time to be an actor in Ontario. This is a very good year, a very good circuit to be an actor in Ontario.
Yeah, if you get the right breaks, hopefully, yeah.
What would the right break be? Just knowing someone?
Being what they want at that particular
Yes,
time.
the look.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with, but also, having your craft honed so that, you're ready to go for the caliber of the production.
Well, speaking of looks, did you not specialize in that on Tech War? Your character was
Yeah.
about looks. Could you tell her a bit
Yeah.
about us?
Well, we had a lot of fun with Nika, and I got to work with a wonderful team of women in hair, makeup, and wardrobe. And basically, Nika's character was a chameleon, so she was constantly changing. And in one episode, she'd have 3 completely different looks, and that was a little like, how did she change? Like, she'd leave one door and come in, and completely change. So that was a lot of fun for a lot of the viewers. Was just I think a lot of the younger viewers would just kind of tune in to see
what she's wearing
Yeah,
this week and how
yeah.
she's changing this week. What did the character actually do within the substructure of Tech War?
Well, Nika was an ex-cyber jock, so she used to be on the street, and then she got pulled in to the police station offices of Tech War because she was a real whiz on the computer and surfing the net. So she's sort of a very unlikely candidate to be in that atmosphere working, but so she had sort of a neat street element to the office.
Of course, Bill Shatner is at the base of Tech War, and he is a demigod within the realm of science fiction fans. Did you work with him? Did you talk with him? What were your impressions of the man?
Well, I met Bill, and he was a really lovely man. I'm not particularly starstruck, so I just met him for who he was, and I felt like he really met me, and he was very generous. He's so charismatic. It's incredible. He's just got so much energy, and he really brought a really great energy to the set, so we'd all get kind of charged up, and it was just fun. It was really enjoyable working with him, and I mean, every now and then I would kind of go, that's Captain Kirk, and I mean, because I watched Star Trek too, and then that would just kind of pass, and we'd get on with doing the scene. So, but it was really fun meeting him.
It's a little different acting for the camera than it is on stage. When you work on stage, you have to know an entire block of dialogue, the whole 2 hours or whatever it is. But learning lines for camera, you stop and you start, and you do everything 4 or 5 times over. Does that make it easier to learn lines?
I actually had a real challenge with learning my character's lines. I mean, it may definitely seem that way, but my character had all of what I would call the techno-babble. So I had to deal with cyber bonds and plutonium futures and all these words that I was like, what is that? So I developed actually a technique for myself just out of necessity, and I would draw these pictures, and I kind of started this little trend on set of all these. I would always come to set with my pictures because I had to give myself some kind of idea of what I was saying because of all the futuristic talk. So once I got that down, then yeah, it's easier in that sense that you don't have a huge amount to say, but you also have a shorter time with it.
Right.
When you're doing a play, you get a long rehearsal period with that, so by the time hopefully you're performing, it frontwards, backwards, and sometimes we'll get handed, the 5th rewrite.
Oh yeah, last
So
minute shocks,
it's like
right.
everything's changed, and you're like, okay, here we go.
On set, that's kind of a fun place to be, or it can be if you've got the right crew and the right director. Do you go out there and have fun times?
On set or
in and around a set.
in and around a set? Okay. We had a lot of studio work for my character particularly, and I had a lovely set, lovely crew, really fun people, and people also understood that when you were coming in with 3 or 4 hours of sleep, everybody's kind of in the same boat. And
were you partying the night before?
No, I was probably learning my 8th rewrite. So no, there wasn't a lot of time for that. But we had a couple of little Christmas parties and character parties when certain characters would be going on their way or whatever.
I go back to sets. We've been on set with 10 Forward a couple times, a couple of shows that are shot in town. People tend to think, people who aren't in television, who just watch, tend to think that the sets can be, or studios can be very glamorous, wonderful places, and yet we've gone into places that were old factories that have been converted. What kind of a milieu were you in when you actually shot your studio work?
In our studio work, it was all set up like a very futuristic office. So that was, sort of a very, slick set. But
the outside of the building was.
Well, when we went to locations, I mean, we were in sewage factories and like really strange places because they have all the unusual shapes that they want for the style of the show.
Right.
So we'd end up in just really crazy places. But I think the sewage place was sort of the most hilarious one because we were literally walking around plugging
The worst,
our noses.
the best? Yeah. Oh,
It
God.
was.
Did you get to stir the pot? No, we won't even go into that. That's absolutely revolting. Where did you come from, Natalie? How did you get started in acting?
I'm from Toronto and basically started in the industry here. I'd studied for quite a while and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do, theater or dance or visual art, and then I ended up having pictures taken and just, went through the whole process really and got some great breaks and kept working away at it. And
I've heard one actor say that you don't choose acting, acting chooses you. Is there any truth to that, or is that just one actor's perception?
I think everybody's experience is different. I think that was probably that person's experience. Because I think there are some people that are in it as a business.
Right.
And I think there are people in it that are in it because they're consumed by it and they love it. So
That's art to them.
yeah, definitely.
And on the other hand, I spoke to a gentleman who actually coaches actors, and he was quite dismissive. He said that of all the parts of putting together a movie or a play, the actors is the least because your role is only interpretive. Everyone else around you is creative, and you're only interpretive. Now, what do you say to that?
Well, it makes me laugh, really. It really does, because I believe in it as being a real team, and I don't think that any one person is lower on the totem pole. I mean, when you want to do something really productive, then you have a common respect, and I think actors need that respect as well, as much as we have to respect the writer's work and the cameraman's eye and craft. But we're the ones that have to bring the humanity and the compassion to those words, and if you don't bring yourself to that, the same person can say things, two people can say the same thing, and you'll be moved by one person, and the other person you will feel no compassion towards. And that's ultimately what we want to end up giving to the audience, is something that touches them. And you can't do that, I don't think, without a human being communicating that. Otherwise, it would be literature.
People next door really believe in what you're saying. So, to you, the acting part of it cannot be so dismissed as this one gentleman would have me believe. As I took my odyssey in learning about acting.
No, I don't think so at all.
And when it comes down to this whole business and the things we've been talking about tonight, the availability of work, how you feel about it, is it something you can stay with, do you think? Is this something you can do into your 40s?
I certainly hope so. I've chosen to do this because I love it. And my dad kind of taught me that pick something that you're going to be happy to get up to and do every day. And acting certainly isn't the easiest thing to choose to do, but I love it. So I certainly hope that there's longevity in it for me.
Unfortunately for us, a lot of our Canadian talent just slips out of the country for better opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah.
Now, would that be you?
That could be me.
Are you
That certainly
looking at
could be
something
me.
else? Which way will you go? New York, West Coast?
I'll go LA. I mean, I would love to work in Canada as much as possible. And there is a lot of work here, but it is true that when you get to a certain point and you've saturated that market, you also want to grow as well. And if the opportunities are here, great. But if they're not, then
it's time to go.
Then yeah, I mean, I don't really care where I am. It's not an LA thing. It's a work thing.
The big thrill of the Prime Media weekend, of course, is Chris Carter coming into town. Because
Yeah.
as we know, he has a superb television show on the go, which is shot in Vancouver,
Yeah.
part of Canada.
Yeah.
Should the opportunity ever arise, would you just potter on over to Vancouver and do some X-Files work?
Oh, sure. Sure. I did a feature film out there, and it was great and beautiful. It's a wonderful city to shoot in. So, yeah.
Just before we go, those earrings, they're
Yeah.
wonderful. Can you tell us why you're wearing those earrings tonight?
They're just keychains that I got when I was in Paris and made them into a pair of earrings, and they're my faves.
Natalie, we've really enjoyed having you here. Lots of luck in the future, and we hope
Thank
we
you.
see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to travel on back to Andy. Take it away, sir.
Thanks, Sue. And right now I'm talking to Nancy Kilpatrick, and she's the author of Near Death, and that's a horror novel. And Nancy, what can you tell us about your novel Near Death?
What would you like to know?
Well, first of all, how did you get the title Near Death? It obviously suggests something that's near death, but not death. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's a vampire book for one thing, and these vampires are unusual in that they're kind of another species that walk among us, and so they're not dead in the sense of resuscitated corpses, but you might say they're near death because they're in a state that's between life and death. Also, the theme is played out a lot in the book because there are people who feel like they're near death, or they are near death physically, or they're near death spiritually, or whatever. So it's a theme that gets repeated throughout.
Okay, and what fascinates you with horror? Why did you choose to write horror stories?
I don't know. I'm a sick person, I guess. I don't It's the dark side. I've always loved looking at the dark, the undercurrent of what in society we tend to not look at. We always look at the light, the sunlight, and see what's on the surface. And I've always been attracted to the night and to what is not so apparent. So that's been a natural area for me to write in because it's a natural interest for me.
And what makes a good horror story, in your opinion?
I think Stephen King said it best in a way. He talked about having a situation that feels kind of familiar and normal, so that you get the reader into a state where they are prepared for what is normal, what is ordinary, and then you can introduce something that's a little bit offbeat, and they will accept it because they're everything is so familiar. They'll accept this little anomaly, and then you keep building that up until the point where you introduce something really bizarre, and they're ready for it. So I think that works in horror.
And you're here at Prime Media this weekend, and you're giving some various talks. Could you tell us about what novels are you going to be talking about near death?
Well, I just came from a panel, actually. We did one called Vampiric Visions, which is about how the vampire has changed over the centuries from folklore, from early literature, how it has evolved in terms of television, like we talked about Forever Night, how it has evolved in terms of movies, and what are the up-and-coming trends. So there was a lot of interesting aspects to that panel.
And are some of your novels going to be in any future movies? Are you hoping to incorporate them into screen?
This book is on the verge of being optioned, so let's put it that way, and hopefully that will happen. And I have a TV company that's interested in a story of mine in California, so we'll see.
And what about future novels? What are you working on right now, or what are you going to be working on soon?
Well, I've just, 2 novels I have coming out next year are, actually they're my 7th and 8th novels. One of them is in the same world as Near Death, and it's called Child of the Night, and that comes out in May. And then there's another book from Vampire the Masquerade, which is a role-playing game world. It's very, very popular. People who are anywhere from 16 to 30 pretty much play these role-playing games, and the vampire one is the most popular of all of the world. So I have a book that's written with a collaborator, Don Bassenwaith, and we've got this novel called As One Dead, which is set in that world. So it's actually set in Toronto as well. The vampires of Queen Street West.
Okay, and besides vampires, do you write about any other type of horror, or is it always vampires?
Oh no, I write a lot of different types of horror. I have a series of horror novels that they're called. The series is called The Darker Passions, and Dracula's one. It's based on the classics, and I've done Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Fall of the House of Usher, and recently Dorian Gray, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which comes out next year as well.
Okay, great.
Lots of stuff.
Great, thanks for talking with us. And now we're going to go to a short break, and stay tuned for more at 10 Forward.
Well, there it is, the last show ever of 10 Forward. Now, we will be coming back in a new format. We'll be doing a show called Unreal, which will be a half-hour magazine show, science fiction, and all those wonderful things we've always covered. We had a great night here at Prime Media. We
Yes.
talked to all kinds of people, authors, writers, actors, everyone you want to see.
Yeah, it
We
was
missed the
very
core
enjoyable.
people. Where the heck did they go to, Andy?
They must have got caught up in the traffic jams, I guess, with the bad weather and everything. But I thought they would be here tonight. It was a little disappointing that they couldn't make it, but
There you
I
have
guess
it.
next time
Stuck in the-
maybe we'll get to talk to them in future
Maybe on
segments
Unreal.
of Unreal.
Maybe on Unreal, right.
But
Well, we
yes,
will
it was
be-
an interesting evening tonight.
And we will be here all weekend. If you want to come down and see Prime Media, of course, tomorrow, the big draw, Chris Carter, X-Files. I understand the gates will be barred because they're expecting tons of people in to see him.
Yeah, well, I was actually talking to Patty Vickers, and she's a big fan of the X-Files. She works here at Prime Media, and she was saying that she's really anxious to meet him because he's a great guy, and she's heard a lot of great things about him.
We spoke to some of the actors from the X-Files a few weeks ago, and if Chris Carter is the wonderful guy that they all say he is, we're looking forward to a wonderful time with him. Great interview, and that will also be Unreal, coming soon to a TV station near you. Once again, we are here at Prime Media, and we've had a wonderful evening. We'll miss you all. Fans of 10 Forward, please come back and catch us in Unreal and come down and see us here at Prime Media. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks for watching.